Okay, go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, thank you so much, Jenny. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call our November 12th Board of Education meeting to order. Roll call vote. Roll call, please, Jenny.
Ms. Westphal?
Here.
Mr. Sloan?
Here.
Mr. Reynoso?
Here.
Mr. Nergy?
Here.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack?
Here.
Ms. Conlon-Wasik?
Here.
Mr.
We have a
Chamberlain?
quorum. Oh, sorry. Not here. Okay, sorry about that. We have a quorum. And on to item 3, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. If people would feel comfortable muting and saying it themselves, or you can repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Alrighty. Item 4, approval of the agenda. Board action is requested. I move the Board of Education approve the November 12, 2020 board meeting agenda as presented. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please, Jenny.
Mr. Sloan?
Yes.
Mr. Reynoso?
Yes.
Mr. Nergy?
Yes.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack?
Yes.
Mrs. Conlon-Wasik?
Yes.
Ms. Westphal?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Item 5, the consent agenda. Board action is requested. I move the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as follows. Board of Education meeting minutes, payment of bills, board policy adoption, treasurer's report, and personnel recommendations as presented. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please, Jenny.
Mr. Reynoso?
Yeah.
Mr. Nergy?
Yes.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack?
Yes.
Mrs. Conlon-Wasik?
Yes.
Ms. Westphal?
Yes.
Mr. Sloan?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 6, board reports. Does anyone have a board report for us?
The only thing that I'd like to say is congratulations to the cross-country team. My son was fortunate enough to be able to take part of it, although he wasn't a runner before before this season, and it was a great experience. And all the boys and the girls did a fabulous job this year on both North and Central. So congratulations.
Yes, indeed. Anyone else? Any good news reports? No? Okay, let's see. I would like to give a shout out to Mr. Cermak's public service practicum class. It was just absolutely wonderful that the students were reaching out to elected officials and community leaders for input on how to strengthen community services and organizations. So I was just tickled to get that email. I know other board members did too, and so it was really neat to see, you know, particularly during this time, to see how our young people are reaching out and moving ideas forward, which is always commendable. So thank you so much to Mr. Cermak. And all right, the other thing that I would like to do is confirm finally that we have a date for our January 2nd retreat, and there will be details to come on that. So we can look forward to that. Is there anyone else? No? All righty. At this point, I would like to hand it over to our superintendent, Nicole. Okay.
There we go. Lost my cursor there for a second. Okay. So a couple of shout outs and recognitions. First of all, happy School Board Appreciation Day, which is actually on Sunday, but you may or may not have found a small bag with a little treat, hopefully sugar you up, get you through the meeting. So if you have not found it, take a look in between your doors because it's sitting there and, you know, raccoons might get it. But so thank you all. Definitely appreciate all of you, all the work that you do. So hope you enjoyed that. Also want to make mention of the Veterans Day celebration at Central. That was actually a picture that was in the Herald. It had a really nice showing from our students and our staff with our veterans, you know, some of our community veterans driving around, music and honking and people clapping. It was great. Our students just did a really, really nice job. And so really appreciate them for coming out, but certainly the point was to appreciate our veterans. So that's always something that we look forward to every year. Obviously had to do it in a little bit of a different fashion this year, but our building admin was able to figure that out. So thanks Dan and your team for that. I'm going to do one more little appreciation, but then I'm going to roll into the district goals and they kind of merge here a little bit. But so we're going to talk about our district goals in a second, and there are three. One is mainly, you know, academic. You know, how do we support our students in a pandemic academically? And last week, if you were at our the presentation there that Barb and Jeff and Tracy did, I'm going to refer you there. But we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about our SST teams today, sort of the social emotional piece. And just a shout out that I want to give is to them, is to our SST teams. And this is a quote from Meg Light, our associate principal for student services over at North. She said, SST is really a group of people I could put in a battle any day. The amount of troubleshooting, creating warmth and care for their kids, that constant cheerleading for students and parents makes her sit back and be beyond grateful for the people around her. So definitely want to echo that. The North SST team, the Central SST team, there's a lot going on there. So that's what I want to roll into now, into our district goals piece. So first of all, that first district goal, superintendent will ensure academic support for all students. Again, I would refer you back to I couldn't do a better job than they did last week. It's online. You can watch it if you have not seen that. But goal 2 is we'll support all students' social emotional needs with appropriate interventions and mental health assistance. And so what I'm going to do is not nearly as polished as it was last week, probably not as coherent, but just want to go through and just alert the board to all the work that's going on. You know, certainly these teams pre-COVID, they're working their hearts out to make sure students are supported. But this is clearly, you know, goes without saying, a different situation. And they've had to find different ways to make those connections. And really, they've worked hard at doing that. So want to go through a couple of things. First of all, they made mention that Panorama that we've talked about here at the board table, that really is a really important tool for those SST meetings. They use that data to really dig into that and determine which groups of students they need to make some connections with. So one example that they found, and Panorama is just a big program, gives you data academically, social, emotional, all that stuff. But one of the things that it does is you can go student by student and look, for example, academically, and it'll give you kind of a trend arrow for a student if their grades have been, trending up or trending down or what have you. What they've been doing is, certainly, as we'll see in a minute, they focus on students who are struggling, of course. We want to make sure we get those kids' grades up, or make sure they're feeling connected one way or the other. But what they've done is look for students whose grades are on the upswing, as opposed to those who are, on the downslope, I guess. But they've made parent calls, student calls when they've seen students, and it's not, students who are going from an A- to an A+. Well, that's great too. But, students who went from a C to a B, or a D to a C, students who were maybe not doing so well, but they've brought it back up, and they've made parent calls, student calls, and they found that to be focusing on that positive, shockingly, is a really powerful message to our students and their families, and I think the families really appreciate that people have noticed. Yeah, my son has been working, my daughter's really been working to get that grade up, and you noticed. We really appreciate that. So that's one of the things they're using it for. They do what are tip sheets. So for example, I think I've got one here that are written by our school psychologists, sending some of those out. So for example, this is an example of one. sending it out to students. So again, just tips, practices, take a deep breath and relax, some mindfulness stuff, trying to help our students in the social emotional realm. That's not the right one. There we go. There are SEL support pages. If I can get to it, that would be great. On both schools' websites, and I'm not going to go through point by point, but you can definitely see they're building out these resources and making them available for students or parents as well. So, advocating for yourself, communication overload, which I think we could all probably use, tips for coping over time, et cetera, et cetera. Different videos, different resources, and I'll go into the North one as well. So similar resources, just laid out slightly differently, but you get the idea. Spending a lot of time putting those resources together for students and making sure they're pointed in that direction. In addition, they're going to be working on a calming room coming soon to students and parents. So I'll just quickly, it's not yet available, my understanding. But again, some of these social emotional lessons, mindfulness lessons, relaxation, etc. So that's just an example of some of the resources they're putting together in support of the school. Now I'm going to go through and, again, I don't want to go through every bullet point you can read, I'm sure, but just to give you a sense of what our counselors, our social workers, our student support folks, deans, nurses, what they're all doing. I think the academic piece tends to be more obvious, what's going on in school or, in a remote learning environment as well. It's not always obvious what our SST teams are doing. They're working behind the scenes, working with our students, of course. But just some of the things that they're doing, daily check-ins, Zoom meetings, college readiness, making individual appointments. Like I said, I didn't want to go through all the bullets. There's quite a bit that they are working on, but it's making connections with kids. That's really the overarching theme, trying to identify students who are struggling or who may need, somebody to reach out, parents. There's still a need to go through college applications and FAFSA and all of those things. That stuff doesn't stop. So they're working on that. Sending transcripts, working collaboratively, this last bullet point, solving grade concerns, working collaboratively with the student, with the teacher, maybe the department chair to try to see what we can do to get those grades up if that needs to happen. Our counseling departments have been working on a RAMP application, and that's through through ASCA. That's sort of the big professional organization for school counselors. The North team has submitted that application for RAMP certification, and we're waiting on that, the word whether or not they were accepted. Just to get that application is a massive amount of work. We'll probably address that at a later time, and I know our central team is working on that as well. So again, collaboration with CLC and the Illinois Student Assistance Center, that's college resources and whatnot. Definitely collaborating with the AIM team, presenting to various groups within the school, and Parent Night, that's Parent Night at North for Conexiones, for Spanish-speaking parents. Deans, when people think deans, they think discipline. Kids are doing things wrong and they need to be disciplined or whatever. That's really not the dean's job, particularly. That is a piece of it, but in a remote learning situation, they found it's very different. So they're working on attendance. They're doing a lot of the same things as our school counselors as far as reaching out to our families. Again, troubleshooting attendance, taking care of the occasional Zoom bomb issues. But again, you can see in those bullet points, making connections however they can. Our prevention and wellness folks, so that's Jenny and Kate at North and Central respectively, they're working, running small groups. They're meeting with individual students. Calendly is a scheduling program, not to get too in the weeds there, but making appointments with students and parents. They're facilitating students from Nice Way group, facilitating students going out to the Avon School during Red Ribbon Week. Really cool stuff. So a lot of wellness, signs of suicide, class presentations, and working on wellness activities. Our school psychologists, they're still testing students for possible special education placements. The tip sheets that I kind of really briefly went through, they're working on those. Again, communicating and coordinating with families, IEP, Section 504 meetings, participating in team meetings, and again, as with all of these folks, they're a problem-solving resource for teachers around specific students and cases. Our social workers are still meeting individually with students, meeting in groups, connecting with parents, communicating with teachers. It's almost too much to list. You can read. I'll just really quickly highlight some of the things that they're working with. And our school nurses. Our nurses, even though our students aren't in the building, they are working really hard to keep track of, we are tracking COVID positive cases with our staff, with our students, or close contacts. All of that has to be documented, and there are timelines. So if you test positive on this day, what does that mean? When are you able to come back? Even our students, and again, our students largely aren't in the buildings, but we do maintain communication with families, and they're keeping track of that. And again, just extremely helpful just for a data collection exercise, just so we kind of know what is going on in the community. We know not everybody's necessarily reporting. If they're not in every day, they may not think about that as far as a close contact or a positive case. But we're through our nurses and through their work and keeping track of all of that, and working with the health department with all of those cases as well, we're able to kind of get a sense of what it might look like if students are coming back in a larger way in a hybrid model. Okay. Sorry, that's a lot. That's a lot I just threw at you. So for goal 2, do you have any questions? And team, if there's anything I missed that you want to highlight, please jump in. Okay, well, I will work quickly through goal 3. And goal 3, I'm sure you remember, it's all about professional development, sustaining multimodal research-based professional development to support the attainment of individual and organizational goals. And this of all years, the need for professional development has been pretty high just because the situation we're in. And teachers, again, the cliche is teachers will feel like first-year teachers all over again. And I think that's proven to be the case. So on November 2nd, as an example, we had a professional development day, and our instructional coaches put together, among others, a really nice program. And I'll just highlight that really quickly just to show you some of the things that were going on. Trying to create resources and sessions for just about every need. So we did have some department meetings, but you can see supports for late work and organizing Schoology and SEL resources, all sorts of things. We had an equity session as well. And I'll jump over to Central. Similarly, quite a bit going on over the agenda, sessions on current events and the station rotation model, and again, trying to create a menu for staff members to meet them where they're at and meet their needs professionally, and everybody's in a different spot with that. And just, here are just a few more examples. I can send you this link if you want to take a look. An instructional technique called the grid method, which it's an instructional framework that helps with remote learning effectively. But I mean, really, that isn't all going on just on those days. I mean, this professional learning, this support for our teachers is ongoing, and again, that's why our instructional coaches are absolutely invaluable to whatever we're doing, particularly this year, so they can help teachers again meet them where they're at. I do want to highlight some equity resources. We did have, Gabrielle is working on our equity audit and working on resources for our teachers, and she had sessions at both schools. Oops. What's going on there? All right, having a slight Google Drive issue. So I'm going to back out of that. I don't know quite what's going on. So anyway, equity is a part of our professional learning program as well, and it's just ongoing for our teachers. So that is about, and again, that was kind of a really quick, really brief overview of kind of what's going on. There is a lot going on. If there's anything you'd like more detail on, we can certainly provide that. But, you know, Tracy, is there anything that I missed?
No, I would just emphasize the ongoing nature of the professional development, which you mentioned. November 2nd was a wonderful day. But again, as we mentioned last week at committees, the board's support for our instructional coaches has been invaluable. Just the ongoing support and resources and daily interaction they're having with staff has been just so important in this transition from in-person to remote, and always important, but just especially important in this time. So they've just done incredible work. So thanks again to the board for your support in that.
I have a question. With the professional development, has there been any professional development in the, like, to teachers to help kids get more organized? Because I can only speak from my children and the kids that I talk to in the neighborhood. It seems like the teachers are wearing a different hat a little bit more this year of helping them, you know, the kids get a little bit more organized. So if you are doing that, kudos. If you're not, it's still coming out in the teachers, and they're doing a fantastic job. So
Thanks. Yeah, that's actually something we've been emphasizing, not just in remote, but we now have an executive functioning coordinator in each building. And that's really their role, is to help students organize and prioritize and do those executive functioning skills that some students need development with. So we actually have someone in each building helping to support the executive functioning of our students. And on November 2nd, there was work around executive functioning skills as one of the sessions for teachers. And we have ongoing resources in each building. And we've actually had to take pauses at times through the year to just make sure that our teachers organizing Schoology in a way that makes sense for students. Do we need to streamline that a bit? Do we need to streamline where students can find out how to get a hold of people, right? Because sometimes in this remote world, it can feel a little like there's information everywhere. So how do we streamline that has been a point of conversation in buildings. So absolutely, Douglas, to your point, it's an ongoing conversation for teachers and for students.
Yeah. So certainly, again, in every year, there's lots of things that our teachers are working on, our staff is working on. There's all sorts of different branches, all sorts of different arms to it's kind of like an octopus, like this professional development program that we've got going on that Tracy, I'll give her all the credit for. Yeah, it's impressive, but we're constantly working on it. Are there any other questions?
I'm sorry. Any questions? I have one. It's kind of obvious, but I thought I'd throw it out anyway, about getting feedback from the teachers, you know, at the end of the professional development days, but then ongoing feedback. And there's got to be a loop there somehow, right? I mean, to find out what's next. So that's part of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's the formal pieces, as you suggest, at the end of each institute day. Teachers are provided a feedback mechanism, a survey that they have to complete. But beyond that, we have regular listening sessions with staff, almost weekly, with staff in each building, where we get ongoing feedback from staff.
Okay. I figured you were. I just wanted to, I guess, ask the obvious.
Yeah, and again, the power of the instructional coach is that they're not administrators, right? So our teachers can go to them and say, hey, you know, I could really use help here. Maybe, you know, I don't want to admit that, you know. It's all between peers, and that's really the power of it as well.
That's terrific. Thank you. Are there any other questions, board members? Can we move on? I'm getting some nods. All righty.
Okay.
Nicole, FOIA requests or anything?
They have been fulfilled.
They have been fulfilled. All righty. Then we will move on to item 8, which is our student board representatives. I think, Keegan, you are up first.
All right. So first of all, I just want to thank Dr. Storsley for his service and everyone else on the call who might have served as well. So thank you. And like he said, we had that Veterans Day parade yesterday, which we planned pretty quickly, and it ended up being pretty successful, which was pretty cool. We also had our boys and girls cross-country teams qualify for state. Even though it wasn't fully happening this year, it's still pretty neat that that happened. And then this weekend is our first day for the food drive. It is a little different this year, as we will be having flyers as opposed to collecting food. There will be a link to donate money online.
Keegan, we can't hear you, or I can't hear you. Can people hear Keegan?
I can't either.
No,
We lost the
we can
sound.
no longer hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, my bad. So this Saturday, November 14th, we will be dropping off the first flyers, and then December 5th will be the second day to remind you to donate.
Thank you. Does that conclude your report? Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that part. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Keegan. And now we're going to move on to Charles. Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well and staying healthy. I'll just get right into it. We had Student Council had their food truck festival this Saturday. So we had multiple food trucks come, and Student Council members would take orders from the cars, bring it to the food trucks, and we'd bring them their food. I think we raised about $400 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So that was a great charity drive. I know the play has had to be postponed because of COVID, unfortunately, but I know many of the people in it are ready to get back as soon as they can. Student Council has also planned some virtual events, such as a pumpkin carving contest and a costume contest, which was done via Schoology. So that was very cool to get in the Halloween spirit. The athletic boosters are having a fundraiser at Mod Pizza this coming week, November 16th. So if anybody would like to eat some pizza, I know they'd greatly appreciate that. And then finally, for cross country, Armani Diaz, who is currently a junior, did qualify for state. So that's very exciting for him. And then that concludes my report for today.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank
No
you,
problem.
Keegan. Thank you, Charles. Wonderful. Always the best part of our meeting, you guys. So thank you. Okay. At this point, we're going to move on to item 9, which is public participation. I'd like to open our floor up to public participation. Each person would have 3 minutes to speak, and we do ask that you provide your name so that we know who to get back in touch with, or at least our superintendent does. Mikkel, do you notice any new people out there that may want to speak?
We do have community members here, and just as an organizing thing, if it's possible, if you're able, if you would like to speak, engage in public participation. Sorry, I'm having trouble getting the words out. If you could raise your hand or something, I just want to make sure I don't miss somebody, and that alerts me that somebody in the participant list would like to speak. We just want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. So if you would like to,
Yeah.
raise your hand, and we will get going.
Yeah. I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a while to find it, like it's been taking me a while to find my cursor tonight. So.
Okay. So we will talk very slowly until we, all right.
Yeah.
Nope.
Don't see anybody.
Okay. All righty. I guess we do not have any public participation this evening, so I will close public participation. And we will move on. We do not have a need to go into closed session. Is that right? Has anything changed? Nope. Okay. Very good. Let's see. All right. I'm going to hand it over to you again, Mikkel, for continuing business, which is our COVID-19 update.
Right. I don't have a whole lot to update the board on. I think people can watch the news and see what's going on. You can look at our numbers. They're they're going in one direction, they're going in the wrong direction. And they right now don't show any sign of kind of plateauing or leveling off, sadly. So that's where we're at right now. Just to give you a sense of, I guess, our philosophy of what's going on in school right now. Obviously, our hybrid plan was set to start this week for those reasons, for the COVID, I'm trying to remember what Mark Pfister said, the hyper serious community spread or something like that. Can do our hybrid plan, bringing hundreds of students and adults in the building at this time. However, we do have some of our smaller groups, some of our support groups, AIM, some special ed students coming in. And we feel in a much smaller setting with much more space throughout the building, we feel like those are important to continue to try to bring students in, because we're nearing the end of the semester and there's some students who need support, that need our teachers to pull them across the finish line. I think I've said that before. So, obviously we are trying to be as meticulous as we can with wearing the mask, social distancing, and, washing hands and hygiene and things like that. We also have our athletics going as we can, according to IHSA rules. There is still because our athletics since roughly June have done a really good job, and they have their procedures down. So we feel like it's important, again, to get as many kids as we can, even in that limited setting, connecting with some of our adults. The ongoing basketball argument is just that, it's ongoing. It looks like there may be some attempt for the governor and IHSA to possibly communicate next week. So we're hopeful that will happen. At this time, we're planning on bringing our basketball teams in, but on a limited basis. And I'll let Tina and Brian, they're going to address basketball parents this week at some point. So that's kind of where we're at. It's all of us are, in terms of superintendents and districts, we're all checking in with each other and kind of what's going on in different buildings, and we're all sort of in the same spot. What I very, very roughly described to you there, hybrid on hold, but bringing in groups of students where we can, where we feel we can do it as safely as possible. So it's about what I have right now.
Thank you very much, Mikkel. Do any board members have any questions at this time? Yeah. Aaron, Amy, Douglas, no. All righty. Thank you. I think we are all watching constantly, like you all are, and hoping things get better. So I guess at this point we will move on to our item 12, which is committee reports. And Douglas, would you like to give us an update?
Of course. So we had a meeting on November 5th. Our next meeting is on December 3rd. The November 5th meeting, we went over the modification for the solar debt recommendations. Also went over the levy, which we'll go over tonight, and the bell schedule, besides the COVID update. So again, next meeting is December 3rd.
Okay,
and that
thank you very much. Okay, sorry. Thank you so much, Douglas. Programming, policy, and personnel. Jay. Oh, sorry.
No,
Amy.
that's me.
Amy, I'm messing
That's
up.
okay.
Sorry.
That's
Thank you,
okay.
guys.
It's not a problem. Yeah, we had our meeting last week and we went over the COVID update. We went over the bell schedule in depth for next year, which Dr. Landry is going to go over, I believe, later tonight again, right? Which I thought was really, I mean, it's very in depth. It's very, we had a really good conversation about it. We also went over, Dr. Landry, Dr. Chagrin, and Mrs. Georges went over a really good presentation about how the schools have been supporting our remote learners this whole year. And the overhead was about learning loss, but what we really learned was what our students have really been doing. So this whole national discussion about learning loss, we really have to look at this in our community here, and how our AP students have just blew away their numbers, right? And have done really well already last year versus this year. That our freshmen are doing as well as they did, year over year as the year before. So things like that, we can't make assumptions. So they brought in some really interesting data, and that's going to be shared out to the board in December. So I don't want to take away all of their discussion points right now, but these are the things that we discussed in our meeting last week. So it was a great meeting, and I'm really glad that they're going to come and talk about all of it in December to the whole board, because everyone on the board needs to hear it. Yeah. We also went over basic policies that we are the first reading are in the packet tonight. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Losing my voice tonight.
No,
not good. I've been talking a lot lately in the community. Can you tell? My doorstep. Okay, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. And okay, Illinois Association School Board. It really is Jay's turn now. Jay.
Sounds like my night. Yeah, so big thing. We have the Delegate Assembly on Saturday. I'll be attending that. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at the resolutions included in your board packet. We have a resolution in there. Unfortunately, it wasn't approved by the committee, but we'll still be advocating for it on Saturday about this loan program. Kathleen, I'm wondering if you kind of just update everyone on, your reasoning for creating that statement, why we should support it, and just to give everyone some background on it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let me see if I can do that quickly. I think one of the reasons why we want to support it is because it's very expensive. Purchasing bonds is very expensive when you look at the costs associated with bonds. It's not just the commissions, which can typically run about $30,000, but there's tremendous amount of fees, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of fees associated with that oftentimes board members are not made aware of. And because you hear about the fees, but then all of these additional costs are rolled in. So it's like getting a mortgage where they're rolling in all the fees, only you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's a lot of money for communities. And so what happens in different communities across the United States in places like Indiana and Texas and things like that is they have, I guess the easiest way that I can think of it is like a sovereign fund where they will collect money through, in Texas, it was through fracking and oil extraction, and that money would go to pay for the interest on the loans and all the costs associated with it. And so these are the kinds of things that are happening, very interesting things are happening across the country. So what I was thinking is that it might be useful for us to be thinking that way too, so that when school boards go out and we have to sell a bond, that communities are not paying more than they absolutely should, and so that more of the community's money goes to the children and goes to the school itself. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be long-winded about that, but that's it in a nutshell. And where I failed, was that I needed to add some language to it, saying that it was specifically for infrastructure, because what I learned later, and of course I would never dream of this, because I don't think we would ever dream of this, and Abe would certainly have a heart attack, is that we wouldn't, and certainly Nicola would, is that in some school districts, I have heard that they might consider issuing a bond to pay for something other than infrastructure. And I'm not going to go there, but it's a lot. So yeah, that's about that was the idea behind it, and it did get initially it got a lot of enthusiasm. from the Illinois Association of School Boards, but I dropped the ball and I'm hoping not to do that next year. So is that good enough? Or is that enough? Yeah, everyone's looking like, yeah, Kathleen, that was more than enough.
Good. That was
As you
awesome.
can tell, I'm excited about this. And we'll see. I think in the situation that we're in, it might be challenging, but then again, it might be an opportunity. So, Jay, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I
All
brushed
right.
up on my
All
convention
right.
skills, and we got Saturday to look forward to. So that's the end of my report.
Okay, go. Yeah, go get him, Jay. Is there anything else that you want to discuss? Are you going to go over? So there's no reason to go over the resolutions because they're settled and you guys, I know that you guys met earlier, Mikkel and Jay, or?
Yeah, we had a discussion. Nothing really jumped out that was a red flag or alarming. We tended to agree with what was already discussed from the committee. So no, I don't really need to discuss anything specifically, but if you found something, we can certainly discuss it.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. And again, our Illinois Association of School Board meeting, a retreat will be on the 20th. And thank you guys for getting back to me today. I so appreciate it. I know I was being really pushy, but you all came through, so that was great. And if I may, Jay, I do want to add one thing that I didn't mention earlier, is that now that the election is over, and our state reps are coming back, I think it might be a time to move our parity in funding for public and therapeutic day centers forward a little bit. So if any, move that idea forward. So if any board members are interested in talking to me about that, or maybe helping me think about how we would do that, I'd really appreciate it. And that's it. And so Jay, sorry for talking so much through your, but these are things I forgot to mention earlier. So anyway, thank you. And we'll move on to CEDAW. Hal, where are you?
Hi.
There you are.
Just the things that keep coming up are handling COVID, and Val is directing all staff to work remotely as much as possible. So it's which makes it more difficult to educate those students. So but that's really kind of just dealing with the day-to-day of the COVID and the day-to-day changes of the COVID. So that's really about it.
Thank you, Hal. Yeah, it's very, very hard for CEDAW and right now. So thank you so much. Moving on to Ed Red. I'm not quite sure who all was there. I think Abe, you were there. I was there. Quick update, Ralph Mortieri from the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability was there. He was one of the masterminds behind the fair tax. Needless to say, he was not happy. He thought that we kind of lost a great opportunity, this is what he said, to support our schools and to invigorate our economy. And he did say that he felt that in a roundabout way, the majority of voters in the state of Illinois voted to tax themselves because it's the only way the state is going to be able to, that they think right now the state is going to be able to pay its bills. Abe, am I right? Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think you've captured it. A big portion of that was to be directed towards lower tiered districts that are inadequately funded, such as us as a tier 1 district. And also of concern is that the state budget was under the assumption, a revenue assumption, that the fair tax would pass and that revenue would be included. So yeah, many causes of concern. So the additional one now is state revenue and how we proceed.
Before people feel really bad, we do have a year to think about this because, Ralph did say that many school districts, they would have funding, and we are certainly because of the good work that has been done here fiscally over the years. We are able to get through next year, and we are hopeful that, I don't know, we are hopeful that things will work out. All righty. With that, I guess we can move on. Thank you so much, everybody, for your work on the committees. Okay, item 13, new business. All right. Recommendation to approve the 2020 tax levy. Board action is requested. Douglas.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
I move the Board of Education approve the 2020 tax levy as discussed and recommended by the F&F committee. Legal notice was published in the newspaper on October 20th, 2020, with a public hearing scheduled for November 12th, 2020, prior to this regular Board of Education meeting.
Great. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you so much, Hal. Any discussion, guys?
Just like to thank Abe and the rest of the team for being very communicative, both with the video and the materials, and being totally transparent. I'm sorry. So I appreciate it.
Yes.
And the rest of the board for being in all the committee meetings. So that was very helpful.
Thank you for your leadership, Douglas, on this. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Conlon-Mossick,
Yes.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack,
Yes.
Mr. Nergy,
Yes.
Mr. Reynoso,
Yes.
Mr. Sloan,
Yes.
Ms. Westfall.
Abstain.
Okay, motion carries. 13B, Grays Lake Education Association, GEA, Collective Bargaining Agreement Extension Board action is requested. Douglas.
I move the Board of Education approve the Grays Lake Education Memorandum of Agreement with the Board of Education as discussed and recommended by the F&F committee.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please, Jenny.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack,
Yes.
Mr. Nergy,
Yes.
Mr. Reynoso,
Yes.
Mr. Sloan,
Yes.
Ms. Westfall,
Yes.
Ms. Conlon-Mossick.
Yes. Motion carries. 13C, recommendation to approve memorandum of agreement for contract exemptions. Board action is requested. Douglas.
Okay. I move the Board of Education approve the memorandum of agreement between the GEA and the Board of Education on the clarification of job titles excluded from the GEA bargaining unit.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Hal. Discussion? Roll call vote, please, Jenny.
Mr. Reynoso,
Yes.
Mr. Sloan,
Yes.
Ms. Westfall,
Yes.
Ms. Conlon-Mossick,
Yes.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack,
Yes.
Mr. Nergy.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. D, recommendation to adopt a resolution authorizing commencement of vaping litigation. Board action is requested. Douglas.
I move the Board of Education adopt the resolution authorizing commencement of vaping litigation with a contract with Franz Law Group.
I need a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please, Jenny.
Mr. Sloan,
Yes.
Ms. Westfall,
Yes.
Ms. Conlon-Mossick,
Yes.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack,
Yes.
Mr. Nergy,
Yes.
Mr. Reynoso.
Yes.
Motion carries. E, recommendation to approve attorney-client fee contract with Franz Law Group. Board action is requested. Douglas.
I move the Board of Education approve the attorney-client fee contract with Franz Law Group to represent Grays Lake District 127 in the vaping litigation.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please, Jenny.
Ms. Westfall,
Yes.
Mrs. Conlon-Mossick,
Yes.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack,
Yes.
Mr. Nergy,
Yes.
Mr. Reynoso,
Yes.
Mr. Sloan.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, F, resolution authorizing and providing for the issue of an approximately 2,930,000 refunding debt certificate, Series 2020A, for the purpose of refunding an outstanding debt certificate and providing for the sale of said certificate to State Bank of the Lakes.
You could do it.
Board action is requested.
I think you did it.
No, that was my
Yes,
part.
ma'am.
You got the next part. Sorry, Douglas, you're not off the hook. I didn't do it. I move.
Okay, I thought you just read it. Okay.
No, I was supposed.
You were supposed to read that part.
Just do your
Yes.
part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I move that Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing and providing for the issue of approximately 2,930,000 refunding debt certificate, Series 2020A, for the purpose of refunding an outstanding debt certificate and providing for the sale of said certificate to the State Bank of the Lakes.
I need a second.
Second.
Oh, I
Is there
see.
discussion?
Same thing. Got it. There we go.
Roll call vote, please, Jenny.
Mrs. Conlon Wasik,
Yes.
Mrs. Knutson Strack,
Yes.
Mr. Nergy,
Yes.
Mr. Reynoso,
Yes.
Mr. Sloan,
Yes.
Ms. Westfall.
yes,
Motion carries. Okay, guys, we have a little bit of an unusual item here. Dr. Landry is going to give us an update on the recommendation for the 2021-22 bell schedule. There were some questions after the committee meetings, and there's been some ideas that the administration have been thinking about. So, Dr. Landry, would you like to go ahead?
Sure, yeah. So it is with great excitement that we are able to bring this schedule before the board tonight. Well, a recommendation and a proposal, two different schedules that I'll go through both of them. But obviously, as we talked about last week, this has been a year and a half in the making with a large group of stakeholders and a whole lot of work and research. And we're pretty excited about the possibilities under a shift such as this. So if I may, I'm going to share my screen to just kind of talk about the two different schedules you have in your packet tonight. Okay, so the first schedule in your packet tonight should look familiar. This is essentially the same schedule that we looked at length and discussed at length in both FNF and P cubed in our last committee meetings. This is the recommendation to move to a block schedule, starting both campuses at 8 in the morning. And this schedule will get us out at 3:11. One small change I want to draw your attention to from the version you saw last time. You may or may not recall that in the previous version, blocks 2 and 6 were 93 minutes, not 90 minutes. And the 3 minutes we built in initially to allow for announcements. When we reconvened as a committee to put together the other proposal you'll have in your packet tonight, we got into a lengthy discussion about those 3 minutes and determined that we didn't really need them, that we could save those 3 minutes because we're finding lots of different ways to communicate announcements to students now. Our broadcast journalism students are starting to work on video versions of these announcements that will be sent out. We don't have such time carved out now, and it's fine. So we gained back those 3 minutes. So the only difference in this schedule is instead of getting out at 3:14, we're getting out at 3:11. Otherwise, it is identical, and all of the things we discussed that were benefits of shifting to a block model remain true. We reviewed each of these bullets last time together. But just as a reminder, right, we as a committee felt like the longer blocks of time met with our mission of relevant, engaging, and authentic learning. It better provides time for that. That it creates a healthier climate in the building when students and teachers are navigating fewer courses each day. It's a calmer, easier environment to navigate in the research that we did. In this model, students will have the opportunity to take 7 classes plus having that flex period we discussed, that SRT, student resource period, plus having a lunch. So it opens more options for students to take electives they might otherwise not be able to fit. That SRT or flex period allows for built-in time for students to meet with teachers and support staff, get academic, social, emotional support, collaborate with peers, be a part of programming that's offered during those periods. So it's a lot of exciting flexibility made available for students that they don't have to use their lunch to do these things. It does allow us to start 30 minutes later for Central and essentially a wash for North. It's 5 minutes later while still getting out at a reasonable time. That seniors will have an early release, late arrival option once SRT is in place. It's a consistent piece for our freshmen who really only know block more or less at this point in their learning. That longer blocks of time allow for more innovation, cross-curricular things that can happen in those longer blocks. And then it allows for that later start without pulling kids out of their last period for athletics. So all of these things remain true in that model. And that is our recommended model for those reasons and some others that I'll talk about here in a second. The board asked at the last committee meeting, might we think about, is there a way that we could get a little later in the morning? Can we start a bit later even than 8 o'clock? Can we get closer to the 8:30 recommendation of the American Academy of Pediatrics? And so we reconvened as a committee and built this second option. And we wouldn't be bringing this option if we didn't think this was something that we could do. It is not our preferred first choice, but it was absolutely something that we could get behind. And it is the latest start time that we're comfortable proposing, and I'll talk about why here in a second. But this model starts both campuses at 8:15, and they get out at 3:23. You'll notice the passing periods went from 7 to 6 minutes. And then we shaved off that 3 minutes that I discussed earlier from blocks 2 and 6. So we were able to kind of find 6 minutes within the schedule so that it's really only a 9-minute later piece than it would have otherwise been. So otherwise it's identical, right? It's just starting 15 minutes later. Lunch is then 15 minutes later. They get out of school a little bit later. But I wanted to bring you into our conversation that we had as a committee and as an administrative team that was on our mind when we were putting this together and making our ultimate recommendations. So, and why the end of the day time was so important for us as a consideration. First, we didn't want to shorten the instructional time. We wanted to preserve instructional time as much as we could. We didn't want to just shave classes and make them really short. So without doing that, right, obviously the later you start, the later you end. And there's that ripple effect, right? If students get out later, they end their clubs, activities, and sports later, they get home later, they eat later, they start homework later, they go to bed later, right? And so just being cognizant of that. And then we know that the later we end the day past 3:15, that's the more time that athletes miss class due to away contests. And so it's not that we're kowtowing to athletics, rather concerned about the academic impact on our athletes if they are pulled out of class. So the athletic directors put together just a list, and it's not an exact science here, but kind of anything past really 3:15, the kids may need to miss. In this case, it would only be 5 to 8 minutes of class because it's 3:23, so it's not terribly late. But in the fall, you know, you could see the sports that are impacted. About 30 kids at each school in girls tennis would be pulled out of class 3 days a week. Boys and girls cross country, about 70 kids at Central, 45 at North, about once a week. Boys soccer, you can see the numbers. Football. Golf I didn't include on this list because they are going to miss school no matter when we get out because their contests are longer. You can see what happens in winter. Wrestlers, about 100 of them total 1 day per week would get pulled out of class. Girls and boys bowling, 200 total across the district. They, of course, don't practice on campus, so they have to go elsewhere. They'd be pulled out of class up to 5 days a week. and then you can see what happens in the spring. So that is why we preferred the first model, not because we're kowtowing, but because we didn't want kids to miss class if we could avoid it. Now, in this case, it's only a few minutes if they have to leave. And it's a few minutes of a 90-minute period versus a few minutes of a 50-minute period, and that makes a difference. So we are comfortable with either model, and put them before you as what your preferences might be, and we will adapt with either model, but we've shared why ours is the preference. And certainly as we lived through it for a year and lived through that model, are there things we can do? Are there alterations we can make? Are there changes in the future to the start time that we can do that we just don't see right now? We're certainly open to that reflection, and we'll of course do that, but that is, that's what we have tonight.
Tracy, can you go back to the slide where it has the, I'm sorry.
Yep, I'll go back.
Where you have the 8:15 start and the amount of time that the kids would miss?
Sure.
Are you saying that, I mean, this is at the tops, right? Because there's not, there's not an away football game one day every week, right?
Yeah, I think it's at the tops. So this is what our athletic directors pulled together for me.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, I mean, we don't have a away football game every week.
Right.
But we don't have a soccer,
Yeah.
two
And the other
games
option
every
is
week.
if there's a coach that can't leave, perhaps they arrive at a contest a little bit late, later than they would like, right? That's also an option.
This is max. I mean, we're not going to not every sport has an away game every week.
Right. I mean, there are like spring and fall is going to be more of a concern because you're fighting sunlight or daylight, right?
Of course. Okay. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tracy, how many students are at both schools?
Between 12 and 1,300 at each school.
Right. So every day when students are coming to school, that's the overall.
Mhm.
Every day, 8:15.
Yep.
Their start, their academic start.
Yep.
That's kind of how I'm framing it in my mind. So I definitely appreciate that there's definitely a few students that may have to come and go. And I definitely appreciate that there might be, I think it warrants a look, but that's overall a small number. When you're looking at every day, the impact can be positive for our students.
It's not without precedence, right? When we were in the Fox Valley, it happened more often because they were further away. So it's happened before too, right?
Right. So if you're looking at like a fall sports, you're looking at 100 and some students that may be impacted on occasion versus every day you could have a positive impact by making this change.
Yeah.
Speaking of the sports, I have a similar question is like, for example, isn't like when we're talking about these kids getting out of class 2 days a week, it's going to be the same day. Like soccer is usually on Mondays and Wednesdays or whatever. I know cross country historically, the duels have been on Thursday after schools always, so when we're talking about this block schedule and having A and B days, it's likely that some of these kids are going to be missing the same class every week that as opposed to maybe this week it's this class, maybe this week it's that class, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And along those lines, because obviously if we were in the Fox Valley Conference, that would just be
right.
But now we're closer. How far is the furthest kind of away game?
I don't know that answer. Jim or Dan, do you guys know that answer?
It could be it could be a Fox Valley team.
Oh yeah, non-conference.
Yeah, it could be an out-of-conference game.
But you're not like having to drive to Huntley or Crystal Lake South for a...
Not on a regular basis, but yeah, in the pre-conference schedule, yeah, we do schedule them.
Hey, Ernie, answer your question. In the conference, Obviously, our farthest is no farther than North Chicago.
See, that's significantly closer. That's not bad.
Yep.
There's no comparison between the NLCC and the Fox Valley, that's for sure.
And what you guys said is 8 minutes about when they
Yeah,
do
5
mix-
to 8.
5 to
Not
8 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not the whole class, right?
Well, and it's important to recognize that this won't change anything procedurally as far as expectations go for a student, for a coach, right? They're still expected to communicate with their teachers when they know they're going to be away. They're sort of expected to collect any homework or notes or whatever ahead of time. Usually, I would say most often than not, students are prepared, right? If they know they're going to miss this day, they're going to anticipate, they're going to email. I want to just return quickly to Amy's point, right? This is about the grand majority of students and the benefits of an 8:15 start time.
I'm
Can
sorry.
I ask a question here?
Al, you have the floor.
So the real reason that the committee prefers that first model versus the second model is because there's no time lost to athletics. Is that correct?
Yeah, it prevents that for the kids. It prevents any potential academic impact.
And that's your preference?
That's our preference. But, you know, as we're discussing here, we're bringing both models because we can implement either one.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Kathleen. It's just
No, Erin, you have the floor.
okay. Because now I'm thinking, I'm like, how many coaches would be impacted by having to regularly be leaving there like they were back? I mean, how many of our coaches are teachers that are having to leave their classroom to accompany their students to a meet? That seems to be the bigger problem than the students.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. When it was Fox Valley, we tried as much as we could to put a teacher's duty toward the end of the day. So that wasn't as much of an issue. If we have to have someone step in, we can do that. Or they just get to the bus a little bit later and arrive at the contest a little bit later.
And Aaron, the reality at North is most of our, I shouldn't say most, about half of our coaches are external. They're not teachers. And a lot of our varsity coaches, those contests happen later. It's usually your lower levels that begin first. So that really hasn't been an issue for us, even when we were in the Fox Valley. Hasn't been the adult piece that's been an issue.
Great, thank you.
So I think one of the impulses behind this is that, you know, we know that we have had students who, you know, mental health crisis in our country with students. We had, I think several years ago, before Mikkel came on as our superintendent, we had a room full of counselors at one of our board meetings one night. And they were very clear on start times being a major issue for our students and the mental health of our students. And it was one of the impulses that got this. Well, we wanted this, the board has wanted this for a long time, as you all know, but we really got behind it at that point. And the American Academy of Pediatrics is looking at an 8:30 start time. And also, I think one of the things that I was looking at is I spoke to some coaches this week, and some of them said that a lot of schools, they don't actually get out till 3:30, so that they would be, so 3:30 isn't, even going to 3:30 wouldn't hurt them, is what they were saying. I know it's different for our school, but I'm seeing this as a move towards us, you know, putting our kids' mental health first. I mean, we're not getting exactly what we wanted, but we're getting closer. So that's how I see it.
And what I would say to that, I think you're absolutely right with that. One of the holdups, if not the main holdup, I think most of us know, has been transportation, right? And the heavy lifting to fix that has been done with this, in order to work out the bus, because we're sharing currently, or we would be with the current model, the two buildings share bus routes and bus runs. That's been fixed, that's been addressed, so we can do this model. So, hypothetically, once we get into it and get a feel for it, if there is an urge, if there is a movement to move that closer to 8:30, I think it's a lot easier now, as opposed to if we were still trying to figure out the whole bus thing. I think all the heavy lifting has been done. Structurally, a lot of those issues have been taken care of. So, yeah, I think our thought would be administratively, our recommendation would be one of these two models. Let us kind of get in there and get a feel for it, get a feel for the instructional time that we're being pretty protective about. Yeah, there certainly would be a possibility later on down the road to see if we can push it closer to that 8:30.
Okay. So board members, I can't see everyone and I do apologize, but does anyone have any additional questions? No? I guess what I'd like to know, and I'll go down the list, does anyone have a preference for the 8 o'clock option at this time? Anybody? I cannot see all of the board members.
I don't see any nodding.
Does anyone? We're not seeing anyone? Okay.
Or any thumbs up.
Thank you guys. I appreciate this very much. Do we have board members that are in support of option 2 at this time? I see one.
For 8:15?
8:15, second option, 8:15 option.
Yes.
Yeah?
I'll just
Seeing
give
some
my
thumbs up. Yep.
thumbs up.
Lots of thumbs up? Okay. All right. And again, I know some people have a concern. They would prefer this to be 8:30. But I think Mikkel has, we want to work with our administration and give them an opportunity to get a feel for this and to ease into it. And I think, so if it's okay with the board at this time, I'm going to go ahead and read the 8:15 a.m. option. Okay, so Amy, this will be you. So G, recommendation to approve the 2021-2022 Bell schedule. Board action is requested. Amy.
All right, I move the Board of Education approve the 2021-2022 Bell schedule with a common start time of 8:15 a.m. as discussed.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay. Douglas, thank you. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to thank the administration for coming to a good compromise and just I think this is going to be a big lift for the kids. They're going to be very, very happy.
Yes.
I appreciate this very much.
Yes.
This has been a big, this has been something people have been working on for a long time.
Yes.
I know it and I appreciate it.
I do too.
Shout out to Tracy Landry.
Yes, and the whole committee.
Yeah.
Tracy and the whole committee. I know there's a lot of people behind this. And as Kathleen mentioned, this started with people in an audience. And before that too, I know that. But people speaking up, there were community members who spoke. There have been students who spoke up. There's been board members who've spoken up. There have been lots of people involved. And it's all good. It eventually, we get there. It's good. Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else? Erin, I can't see you. Hal? Jonathan? Okay. All righty. Again, I would also like to say thank you. This has made me so happy all week thinking that our children could sleep a little more. I always hate waking adolescents because it's the one time when they're not yelling at you or being grumpy, so, at least in my house. So Jonathan, I know he's laughing, but anyway, so I'm just happy to think that we're going to have well-rested adolescents. Roll call vote, please, Jenny.
Sure. Mrs. Conlon-Wasik?
Yes.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack?
Yes.
Mr. Nergy?
Yes.
Mr. Reynoso?
The biggest of yeses.
Mr. Sloan?
Yes.
Ms. Westphal?
Yes.
Motion carries. I am thrilled to say that. I'm thrilled with everyone. This is wonderful news. Thank
Charlie
you.
was happy. I saw Charlie applaud.
Charlie. Oh, Charlie, will you be here next year to enjoy this, right? Tell me that.
No.
You're
No, I'm a
leaving?
senior. I'm a senior.
Oh, whose senior's leaving? But you know, but oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm not going to, okay, tell all your friends. You can tweet this out. Okay, we will move on. H, board policy, first reading. Amy, is there anything you would like to
No,
say
there's
about
just the first reading in your packet. It's pretty much standard updates right now on this one.
All righty. Does anyone have any questions for Amy? No? All righty, we'll move along. 14 topics for future committee, our board meetings. You have your next meeting reminders here, thanks to Jenny. Does anyone have anything you would like to add coming up? No? I wish Jonathan the best of luck this Saturday. I'm so excited to hear about your experience in the Zoom room. I can't imagine what it's going to be like, so good luck with that. Yeah, go get them. All righty, moving on to 15, closed session. Do we have a need to go into closed session at this time, Mikkel? No, I'm not hearing anything.
No, sorry.
Okay.
Find mute. No.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, 16, adjournment. Board action is requested. Guys, this is a little bit different per Jenny's email, so just bear with me. I need a motion to adjourn the Board of Education meeting on Thursday, November 20th, 2020. So moved. Thank you. Roll call vote, please, Jenny.
I need a second first.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Westfall.
Yes.
Mr. Sloan.
Yes.
Mr. Reynoso.
Yes.
Mr. Nergy.
Yes.
Mrs. Knutson-Strack.
Yes.
Mrs. Conlon-Wassick.
Yes. Okay, we are adjourned. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and please be safe. And we ended on such a great note. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Awesome job.
Take care.